Welcome to Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I am your host, Megan, and my amazing co host is.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
Hello and welcome. Homeschool Moms Unfiltered is a haven for secular, progressive homeschool parents. Whew, much needed. If you show up to your local homeschool events and you're continuously having to remind yourself to rearrange your face and make it look appropriate when other homeschool parents are spewing conspiracy theories or offensive BS at you, welcome. You won't find that here.
It is so true. I try. I really do. I really try. But my face is so loud. It's hard to fix my face all the time. Okay, so it's 2025. New year, new us. I mean, not really, but we are done with all of the shorter, unfiltered bites that we were doing during the holidays and that crazy end of the year crush. And we're back this week with our regular full length episodes, as well as our book club. So check that out. Check that out in a couple of days. We're kicking off 2025 with a book about, it's called The New Menopause. And I don't know, can I just say that I'm really glad that we're reading this now, but I also really wish it had been out a few years ago when I first started experiencing changes with my monthly cycle. Like yeah, there's so much in it that I'm like, yes, preach. And I can't wait to get to the back, like towards the end where it has like the toolkit with all the suggestions and things.
I know I'm learning a lot, so it's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to join us for book club, you can come and just listen to us talk about the book. Those episodes come out every week on Thursday. It's also not too late to grab the book and read along with us if you want to. We will drop an affiliate link in the show notes and on our various social media channels. I think everyone's familiar with how affiliate links work. We get like a little brownie point from Amazon. It doesn't cost you any more. But when we say brownie point, we're talking like cents, not dollars. Like we have not made sometimes we don't hit the minimum to withdraw the money from the affiliate account, so like we're not breaking it in, but we do appreciate your support because it does help us pay for our Zoom account and all the other stuff that we need to fund our podcast. So thank you for clicking our affiliate links when they are there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so this week we are talking about the very timely issue of tweaking when stuff isn't working. If your home is anything like mine, you're just getting back into the swing of things after weeks, maybe lots of weeks of atypical schedules, right? Are you finding that you're really dreading diving back into something? Or maybe your kiddo is being really difficult about a specific subject. Or maybe you're just like, this homeschool thing, not working out at all, right? If any of these things hit home even a little, stick around. We're going to talk about that. But first, we do like to keep things real here. So, some weeks are great, some aren't. And we absolutely love our kids and we love homeschooling. We are not going to pretend like it's all Instagram perfect all of the time. That is not the reality. And we don't want you to come here feeling bad because you're not living in Instagram. Like, I don't know, you can see the wall behind me. It's like avocado green. I'm in a super cute villa in Tuscany and it works. It totally works with the place, but it does not work on Zoom. So, like we're not living in Instagram here. So you've got a lot going on. You're back in the States, Megan. What do you got? What else is going on?
So we are in the States. We've been here for the holidays. We came home for a couple of logistical reasons. I have a kid who takes ADHD meds and we needed some prescription refills. So that was a little bit challenging. I mean, long term, we'll get that set up in Europe since that'll be our new home base, but we weren't at that point yet. And so he needed his meds. And my best friend's mom passed away. And so coming home to hug her was enough of a reason to come back to the US as well, especially since it was very sudden and it was right the week before Thanksgiving. So then having to go through the holidays with all of that fresh was a lot. So that was a good reason to come home as well. But we are heading back to Europe in about 2 weeks. In fact, today I'm hoping to sign the lease on our apartment in Lisbon. I just sent it over to my mom to be like, can you just proofread this, please, and make sure like I'm not missing anything or should I question anything here? Right. I'm 43 and I'm still like, Mom, can you please check my lease before I sign it? So Yeah, so we'll head back to Europe. We will have a home base in Lisbon. So 2025 is kind of new us because we have completely changed everything about our lives. But yeah, so Lisbon will be our home base. We're going to spend about 7 weeks in the UK. And then later in the spring, we're doing some world schooling pop ups out in Vienna and Budapest and stuff like that. So we're pretty pumped about that. But I will say we are pet sitting right now. So we are on a website called Trusted House Sitters. In fact, I'll put the link for that in the description as well, in case you're interested, because we've talked before, Amanda and I, about how to world school on a budget, and Trusted House Sitters is a great way to do that. So in fact, our 7 weeks in London, 5 of them are pet sitting. So you go and stay at someone's house and you take care of their animals and you follow their guidelines for how they want their animals taken care of, but you have a free place to stay while they're traveling and they have somebody to look after their animals. So it's kind of a nice swap arrangement, right? And so I will just put out a disclaimer that right now we are pet sitting for one elderly dog who's very quiet and chill, so you probably won't hear from her, but 2 birds who every once in a while like to make their presence known. They're adorable. They're so much fun. They're so smart. Like the kids have really enjoyed watching how the birds' minds work and stuff like that, and the way they problem solve and whatever. Oh, look, as if on cue. Did you hear that?
I did. I could hear that one.
when I download and edit our episodes, there is a filter that says remove background noise, and I'm never quite sure what it's going to take out and what it's not. So you might get some birds. It sounds a little like the Enchanted Tiki Room at Disney World sometimes in here, but it's all part of the world schooling experience. So we're rolling with it.
Yeah.
So how about you? You mentioned you're in Italy. I'm excited. We'll be back in Europe soon. So we'll be in the same time zone again. What's going on in Italy? What you been up to?
Yeah. Well, so we are doing our little bit of world schooling. We had talked about that. So we are traveling for about 11 weeks and we started in Denmark and we did all things Lego in Billund, Denmark. And then from there, we went to Latvia for a couple of days because all of the flights had a layover in Latvia. And I was like, oh, I've never been to Latvia. So if we have to go to Latvia anyway, we might as well extend the layover and actually check it out. We learned a lot of really interesting things. If you don't know anything about Latvia, you should totally research it. It's a pretty interesting country with interesting history. And then from there, like we did all of those things. They had a Christmas market. We did the walking history tour. We did like just all of those things. It's been go, 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 go. And then we went to Rome and we did the Colosseum and Palatine Hill and the Roman Forum. And my kiddo had his birthday and all he wanted to see was the Parthenons. And we saw the Trevi Fountain and we tracked down sushi and then we came to Tuscany where we're renting a place that a friend helps manage. It's like a little B&B. It's fun, but it's a little outside of town. So that creates its own interesting set of things. We were here for a couple of days. Then we jetted off to San Marino. We swung by Pisa on the way. We spent a few days in San Marino, climbing all of the cobblestone streets there. It's actually the oldest living republic for anyone who doesn't know anything about San Marino. So that was interesting, but very exhausting. And then on the drive back, I was like, I absolutely cannot do anything more. I just need to go back to the villa and rest. And so, of course, we swung by Florence and saw the Statue of David and the Duomo. And before we got to Florence, we went by the racetrack in Imola, I think is how you pronounce it, and saw the memorial for Cinna. And, just all of the, it's been, and so I realize we're incredibly fortunate, but I'm tired. I'm really freaking tired. And we're in this we're staying in this super cool little villa in Tuscany. It's connected to this much, much larger property. The family who owns the entire property, they were actually the patrons for Mozart. Like they funded Mozart's work. And we're in one of their it used to be like farming. This section used to house silkworms and something else. And it's been converted and it's super cute. The bottom level has like kind of a living room area, and that's where the kiddo's sleeping. And he's made that into like his whole play space. And then you go upstairs and there's a small little kitchen and then the bedroom that we're in, and the bathroom is up there, which in theory sounds like a great amount of space. And when we were agreeing to come and rent this for a long term, it like works for us. It works for our friend. Like, it's going to be great. I did not think about the fact that my husband will still be working California hours while we're here. And it's super echoey. like, like this particular building, I think it's only from like the 1500s, but like he's downstairs on calls and we have like all the sound machines going and he's on calls until 3, 4 a.m. and it's so loud. And and then tonight, like we're going to podcast until probably midnight our time. And my husband's on calls and I'm like, I don't know, like maybe the kid can go to bed in the kitchen. Like, I don't know what we're going to do with him because like there's just nowhere else for him to go. So yeah, but again, we're super fortunate. And yeah, this will be our home base for the next several weeks.
Well, that does sound wonderful. I do totally get like making the best of your space though. Like my kids are very used to being jammed into like oddball spaces. One's on an arrow bed at this house sit that we're at because that's what there is, right? And but thankfully, if you've been traveling with I've been traveling with my kids for ages and always on an extreme budget. So it's like they're so used to just being like stuffed in a corner with a pillow and they're like, we got this, at least we're in whatever city, like we can make it work because otherwise we wouldn't be here. And I'm like, that's pretty much the truth. So, but yeah, there's definite turn taking on the arrow bed. That's not a popular thing.
Yeah, no, that's it. And no one's complaining. Our struggle is, my kiddo is a little bit younger than yours and he still needs a lot of sleep. Mm-hmm. So he usually sleeps 10 or 11 hours a night still. And he's like getting to that point where he's real cranky because he's not getting that, right? Like my husband's up late, so that's keeping us up. And then he's up early to be on his morning calls because he works a bunch of different time zones. And we hear him making the coffee because it's just right there and it's Italy, so it's the little pot on the stove and it's it's all the things. And so like he just really needs a few more nights of enough sleep, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, adventure lifestyle does catch up to you, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. All right. So we are talking changing things up today, right? Big or small when things aren't working. And I think we both have some big examples and some small examples. So it really applies to just about everything. So we thought we'd kick off with some examples of things that we've each tweaked in our own homeschooling journey. And I mean, for us, the biggest tweak ever was becoming unschoolers, right? So if you're new to the podcast, I am a full-fledged unschooler and Amanda is a super academic, aggressive homeschooler. So we approach things very differently philosophy wise, but we didn't start out as unschoolers. In our very first episode, when we talked about the first 5 things to do to prepare to homeschool, we talked about taking these online quizzes that tell you what kind of homeschooler you are. And I'm a huge proponent of these quizzes still. And I took a ton of them because I'm a little bit anal about stuff. And all of them said that we were unschoolers or some variation of like super eclectic hippie homeschooling, right? And I was like, I can't just not educate my kids. That's stupid. We're not doing that. These are wrong. These quizzes are broken. Turns out we're totally unschoolers, but I fought it in the beginning because I thought the quizzes were wrong. And also I think too, I just didn't know to trust unschooling, didn't understand it enough, didn't have enough examples of how it worked. And so that was all part of it. So I bought workbooks when I first pulled my kids from school, and they had file folders and cubbies and, it was a whole thing. And then we were like, this is not working. So then we moved to unit studies, and we did really quite like unit studies. And when we would do a unit study focused around travel or something that we all had collectively coming up, that was great. Like we did a huge, 4 to 6 week long unit study at one point on colonial life in America because we were getting ready to go to Colonial Williamsburg. It was perfect. We all had kind of this collective goal, etc. But when it came to just picking topics that we wanted to do a unit study on that weren't connected to a specific activity, we really struggled for everybody to be on board because one person would be super into it, that topic, and then another person would be like, why are we doing the deep ocean? Like, I don't care about the deep ocean, right? So that got a little clunky. We moved to an online program. So we moved to being quote unquote unschoolers, but I was signed up for a Acellus, which if you don't know anything about Acellus, this was like ages ago. Amanda and I did a whole thing on online platforms and you couldn't pay me to give money to Acellus at this point, right? But this was back in 2016, 2017, before I knew what a horrific ethical quagmire that whole situation is. So I signed my kids up there thinking, okay, fine, listen, we're going to unschool, but at least if they're on Acellus, I know they're getting ELA, they're getting math, they're getting the basics, right? And my kids, I mean, Acellus in my mind is so not an education, right? It's just really not. There's so many way better options out there. But it was giving me peace of mind. I was like, okay, we're doing something, right? And so
Well,
we're
yeah. And
unschooling, but we're band-aiding this with some structure.
sure, also. And until you know better, you can't do better.
Right.
Right. So now you know that that's not where you would want to spend your money, and that your kids can get a much better education. Even if for some reason you did need to go online
Right.
again, you know that there are so many
It still wouldn't be my pick.
better options available. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. And last year, we did a huge 2-part breakdown of that. If you need the link or can't find it, and you're looking for it, message us. If you want to know why Acellus is a complete shit show, let us know. We will gladly help you find that episode. We broke it all down. But anyway, we were there. And that was kind of the thing that was letting me lay my head on the pillow at night and be like, I'm educating my children, right? They're free to explore. They're free to do. They're free to learn organically. But we've got the basics covered on Acellus. And then finally, I just completely cut the cord, right? And I was like, we're done with Acellus, we're done with unit studies, we're done with workbooks, we're going to fully unschool. I had a friend who kind of helped me make that last final step, which was great. But, even that in and of itself still continued to involve so much tweaking. I mean, my kids went from school, which is so structured, right, to a more structured homeschool environment, to then just more autonomy than they were ever used to or knew what to do with. It wasn't like the first day, it was just like, glorious unschooling, right? I mean, even that in and of itself led to so many conversations and tweaking and a fair amount of panic, right, in the beginning, until we figured out and kind of found our groove. So there's been a lot of tweaking on a larger scale in our homeschooling world, which has been big. But, our smaller tweaks might look even a little bit different than what Amanda will share, since she is our aggressive academic homeschooler holding up her end over there. But I think a lot of this will apply no matter how you homeschool, right? So in unschooling, life and learning are super intertwined. It's really hard to kind of separate the two in a lot of ways. But I think so a lot of these will probably be more life tweaking tips, right? Because those are so connected for us. But I think even if you homeschool the way Amanda does, it's fair to say that if a different aspect of your life is completely out of sync and dysregulated and causing you a tremendous amount of stress, it's probably going to spill over into your homeschool life too, right? I mean, it's, even though your life and your education are not as intertwined, they're still all one thing, because you're just one person. Like, does that make sense, Amanda? Do you feel that that's valid?
yeah. I mean, I think there's some truth to that. I do think some people, if you're not an unschooler, you might be able to compartmentalize a bit better. And if life is truly a shit show, being able to compartmentalize might be able to help. It might give you that time and that space to like check out of the shit show and focus on these academic things. And I think that is definitely true for us sometimes, especially around health things that I have going on and stuff like that. But it's true, when I have a lot of doctor's appointments or that kind of thing, it throws everything off. It makes it hard to get everything done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first thing that I popped into my mind for tweaking is just organization and processes. Like, I would encourage you to look at your days, your weeks, your months, and just think about, like, what are the things that are causing you stress, the annoying little things that need to be changed. You don't have to live that way. So if, stuff piling up on this one certain spot on the countertop is consistently like, that drives me bananas, right? Stuff like that. Or like our house in Texas, I don't know what it was there, but whoever was going to do laundry, if there was stuff in the dryer, they would just like dump the stuff in a certain spot that was in the dryer. And I'm like, yeah, this doesn't work, right? This needs printouts and a laminator and a whole system of baskets. Like, something has to give here, because I can't keep walking into the laundry room and this is what's happening here. So whatever it is, put a system in place, right? You can change the system, and it doesn't have to look like anybody else's system. You can bounce stuff, come to our Facebook group and be like, this is the thing that's making me bananas. Come and be like, how would you fix this? Somebody is going to have a wacky idea of how you can solve the thing that's causing stress in your life and help you put that system into place. One of mine was like, when we lived in South Carolina, my boys in particular would get the mail a lot, because they buy and sell cards on TCG Player, which is trading card game. And they were always waiting for something to come or putting something out. And so when they would go to the mailbox, they would get the mail. And every time they would come in, they would put it in a different spot. Right? It would be like on the front credenza, it would be on the kitchen counter. And then next thing you know, I'd be like, has the electric bill come? Like, I haven't seen an electric bill in a while, and it would be in some random pile somewhere. So it's like, we needed a bin. We needed like a little mail sorter. And like, if you're going to get the mail, that's great. No problem. But whatever is not yours needs to go in this bin. There needs to be a process there because it was making me bananas and I was having to go hunt down utility bills and stuff like that. So it can be really small stuff that just adds up to incremental stress in your life that you can fix. Or like, don't tell me when we've run out of something. Tell me when we're running low on something. What does that mean? Is that a dry erase board inside your pantry or on your fridge door, or a text thread or a shared app that you're all using where when somebody opens the last box of dryer sheets, they go, hey, I just opened the last box of dryer sheets. So there's always a process that can be put into place. The cool thing too is that my kids have started putting their own systems and processes into place, especially my youngest, which is pretty interesting. He starts to notice his own things now that where he's like, this is causing stress in my life and I don't like that. So I'm going to put a system into place. His bedroom used to be, oh my gosh, like I can't even, it was like hazmat levels of disaster. He doesn't like that. It stresses him out and it would overwhelm him to try to have to clean that. So now the second he starts to feel that stress, he's got like a notification and he's like, oh, I'm feeling this little bit of stress before it mounts. I'm going to take care of this. Right. Or I can never seem to find my fidget toys because I leave them all over the place. Now he's got like a little designated bowl on his desk. This is where my fidget toys live. So it's like, it's interesting to watch that they kind of picked up the same process of putting systems into place. So
yeah. And the thing is that might work, or you might be like my family, whereas my mom was really big on that. And I have a few systems, but my brothers and I were all messy. It's my mom, anytime she comes and visits any of us, she's like, oh my, what is wrong with you people? Like, why could you not? So just know it could totally backfire on you and your kids might rebel against all systems. But you as the parent, you can do this if, you know, homeschooling it's hugely about the space and the mental space the mom or the parent who's doing it is in, right? The caregiver who's helping man this ship. And if you are feeling super stressed out and at your wit's end, that's absolutely gonna, you know, kids reflect that back and it just gets ugly. So even if your kids rebel against it and ultimately never do it when they get older and live on their own, you can still put it in place in your own home.
Absolutely. Right. The other thing was that we changed was kind of the way we maintain our schedules. So obviously when my kids were smaller, I was the one who was in charge of saying like, we have this, we have that. I was maintaining all their schedules. But as they've gotten older, we've kind of switched the way we maintain schedules. So in the beginning, it was always me reminding the kids. And then we kind of reached this stage where if I forgot to remind them, they would be like, well, you didn't tell me that I had a thing. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to work. I cannot be the sole glue that is holding this together because I work, right? I have a ton of stuff going on and, you know, I have our house and my husband travels all the time. And like, I can't be the only person who's in charge of knowing what goes on here. So we switched to paper schedules and paper schedules worked really well for a while. They had anyway a dry erase board on the outside of their bedroom doors where I would put little like to-do lists or reminders or something like that. And so there was like a little cork board strip on their dry erase boards. And so I would print a weekly schedule every Sunday night. It would have Monday through Sunday on it. And it would have all of their outschool classes. It would have, you know, an orthodontist appointment, whatever was going on just was on there so that they knew if we were, you know, going on a trip, it would be on there so that it wasn't like, what day are we leaving again? Like, I can't do that times 3 times 2 because then you forgot and you asked again. Like, I can't, I'm going to lose my mind. So we went to that. And then the problem was, and it lasted for a while, but then it had been there for so long that they got numb to looking at them. So that would not work. And my boys in particular during COVID times would go to the park in our neighborhood. They would ride their bikes down to the park and they'd play Pokemon Go in the park for like a while. And so I'd be calling them being like, hello, you have math class. It started 5 minutes ago where it starts in 5 minutes. Why are you not? Nobody told me. I didn't know. So I kind of went through this whole thing of like, what are we going to do? And we ended up getting them smartwatches. So it worked great. Instead of putting out a paper calendar on Sunday nights, I would just go into everybody's Google accounts, into their Gmail, update all their calendars. It would push everything out to them. And then I would set reminders, right? And so that way, even if they were at the park, they'd have a 20-minute reminder. That's enough time for you to get home, right? Get a drink of water and sit down for class. So if it's not working and you're feeling like I'm the only one holding this circus act together, figure out a way to kind of balance that out a little bit, right? There are plenty of ways. So scheduling is always a big one. There's just too many moving parts and pieces, right? I mean, I was telling Amanda before we started recording today, like we're leaving where we're pet sitting, we're going here, then my boys are going there, my daughter and I are going here, the boys are going to meet us there, right? It's like, it's like one of those string maps that you see on a crime show where they're trying to like it's like triangulate stuff. I'm like, that's our life sometimes. And so it has to be organized because I can't be the only one holding all of this stuff together. So
yeah, I think that makes total sense. And I think for so many homeschoolers, I would say all, but anytime you say all, someone will be like, not us. But I think for so many homeschoolers, it really does come down to finding the system of schedule organization that works in your house. And then knowing that at some point it's going to stop working and finding another one, because without something to help keep you all on track, right? We use a combination. I use my personal, like a Google Calendar. The kiddo uses a paper calendar next to his desk, but then we also have like a smart home device. We use Alexa that announces all of the things for us. And for right now, that works. But at some point, we're going to be in a position where the Alexa device at home isn't going to work because we're not going to be at home. Again, it's that thing when it's not working anymore, you just take a minute and sit down and decide what you're going to try next, because
tweak.
Yeah.
It's all about tweaking, right? That's it.
So I think if you're a homeschooler who uses curriculum, this can be a little bit harder because for better or worse, you probably spent a ton of time researching and deciding which curriculum you wanted to use. And then you bought it, right? So when it isn't working, there's both the money spent and spending more on something new, and the fact that you made a really thoughtful choice picking this original curriculum and it didn't work. And so there's kind of this feeling of like, now what, right? Like that was the best choice. I agonized over it. I picked this one and it's not working. So like, what do I do now? And it can almost become paralyzing in the moment. I know, like for us, last year, I ran into this with daily 6 trait writing. I think it's a good workbook. I thought it was great for my kiddo when he was in early elementary school. And I still think it's a great, fun workbook to do. And even better, it is approved by our charter for samples. So it was like one less thing I had to really think about. It was pretty fun and easy. The kiddo enjoyed doing it. But what I found was that somewhere between like the third and fourth grade workbook, it became clear that it simply wasn't teaching what I needed it to be teaching, right? And even though the kiddo still liked doing the workbook, he was never able to take what he was doing in the workbook and apply it to anything outside of that workbook. So at that point, it was basically just busy work. And we're not really into busy work, right? Like I don't know anyone who's homeschooling that's like, yes, we want more busy work, right? Like that's not what we're looking for. So for me, like deciding to toss the workbook in the recycling bin, that was easy enough. It's not expensive. It's maybe 10 or 15 bucks, right? Like that part wasn't huge, but I hadn't really thought about what we were going to use for any sort of writing curriculum like that for years at that point, because we had just, first grade daily 6, second grade daily 6, the third grade daily 6. And so suddenly I was in this place of like, shit, like I really need to do a bunch of research, because that's how I work, right? That's how I operate in this world that we've created. And so, that thing of like, yeah, I know I need to make a change and I'm fine leaving it behind, but I'm not sure what to do next. And the big thing that I would want to encourage people to do is to know that just because you pick something to try doesn't mean that you're committing to it. Almost everything has a free trial, or you can find sample pages online, or you can go in a group that you're in and say, hey, is anyone using this? Would you take a couple pictures of unit 1 or the first few pages so I can look at it and give it a try? Like, pick one, check it out. And if it works, great. Maybe it'll be the thing that you use for a whole year. Maybe you'll end up using it for 2 years. Maybe you'll try it and be like, whoa, this is not a good option. And, you just pick another one and try it. it's so easy to just that like analysis paralysis.
That's my life. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, if you're using a curriculum, I understand it. It happens to me all the time. I get it. Right. But don't be afraid to just pick one and try it. Right. There are ways to try it for free or for really, really cheap. Utilize your homeschool groups, your local groups around you, even the library. But a lot of times you'll find PDFs online, or at least a few samples, lots and lots of options. So just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to try or make a lot of noise if you're a bird.
Yeah. Every once in a while. Do you ever go to Rainforest Cafe and like all of a sudden it like the show starts and all the animals start like hooting and hollering? Every once in a while it's like that. So yeah. But I'm telling you, trusted house sitters, go on the website. It's great. I mean, there's stuff in like France and Switzerland. There's like amazing sits, and some of them are like 2, 3, 4 weeks long. So you could go kind of like staycation in a place or whatever and all that kind of stuff. And, depending, I mean, some of them are like small hobby farms. If you've like always wanted to like get your hobby farm itch out of the way without actually owning a hobby farm, you can go and live that life for a month or two and then come home. So it's super fun. So enjoy the chirping vicariously.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So I know you have another example, but before we dive into that, did you know that we have a Patreon, and that by joining our Patreon, you can both support our small business, if you can call it a small business when we haven't actually made a profit yet, I'm not really sure. And not only can you support us, but you can get a monthly themed unit study. It is always fully vetted and own voices. We work really hard to make sure that it's a quality progressive resource. If you're listening to us, hopefully that's what you're looking for. And on top of all of that, one of the levels does have 2 live Zoom meetings each and every month, right? So we hold a Q&A session once a month where we talk about whatever you need to talk about, right? We answer specific questions. We help you troubleshoot things. We talk about curriculum if you need some suggestions. It's usually a really great experience. I'm sure as soon as I say it's always, we'll have one that's an absolute bomb and then I'll feel terrible. But yeah, so it's great. And then we also host a monthly happy hour, mom's night out kind of thing each month, which is it's really more about community building and not talking about our kids and like just finding your people, right? Because that's what I don't know anyone who's like, no, I don't need to find more like-minded people. I'm fine. Thank you. So yes, you can find all of our Patreon details in our profile on Instagram or by visiting our spiffy new website at homeschoolmomsunfiltered.com. It's just up in the left-hand corner. There's a link to the Patreon. You can navigate through there. Yeah, we'd love to see you. We'd love to see you at our next Q&A or social hour.
Yeah, we would love to see you. Okay, so back to tweaking. So I had kind of given some examples that related to homeschool philosophy or lifestyle and things like that. But even as unschoolers, we do engage in formal learning. And I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions about unschooling. Like we somehow deny our kids access to information because we're so married to this philosophy. Like our kids are like, we want to learn how to read. And we're like, no, you cannot. You must sound out road signs for your entire life, right? And there are radical unschoolers. I've come across them. And if that's working for you, that's awesome. They might fall into this category. I've definitely come across some in groups where I'm like, oh, all right, that's a different approach to unschooling than we've taken. But as a longtime unschooler who knows tons of other unschoolers, I would say that's more the minority than the majority, right? There was just a post not that long ago where somebody who was clearly new to homeschooling was like, I don't really understand unschooling. What is this? And the first comment that popped up, the first person to respond was like, no curriculum. And I'm like, that's not actually true, right? Unschooling, the biggest difference is that I am not requiring curriculum learning for my kids, right? I am not saying you have to do this thing and it's 20 minutes or there's no screens. And like our house just doesn't work that way. It's a different thing. But all 3 of my kids have been very happily engaged in formal learning experiences of their choosing. So I think the big difference and sometimes where the disconnect with unschooling is that I'm not requiring those things of my kids. They are things that they have sought out. And it's kind of a flip that gets switched with unschooling, where when something isn't required, it then becomes desirable, right? Think about it in the reverse, right? As soon as you tell someone, kid or otherwise, that something's off limits, what's the first thing they want? the thing that's off limits, right? And it's like, as soon as you tell them that they have to do something, automatically, I don't want to do that thing, right? So unschooling kind of works in reverse. It's like, I'm not requiring it. And then it becomes a really cool sought after thing, is to like find knowledge and absorb as much of it as you possibly can. So all of my kids have been in formal classes, have sought college, have sought higher education, have sought workshops, mentorships, all kinds of stuff. But even with that, if something isn't working, we tweak. So one of my kiddos was taking a biology class and he loves the teacher. He's still with that teacher for other classes and loves the teacher, but the material wasn't what he was expecting. And it wasn't really aligning with the goals that he had, that he signed up for the class for, with those goals in mind. So we talked about it and we tried to tweak, and then we gave it some more time. Like, it wasn't like after, one day in class, we were just like, we're done. Like, we tried to see, like, could this work? Could this fulfill your goals? Is it like a circuitous route to your end result? All of that kind of stuff. And in the end, he decided he was going to drop the class. He still has the same goals, and he's pursuing other things then instead of that one particular class, but that's okay. He's able to do that. If I had forced him to stick with this class that he wasn't loving, I wouldn't have achieved a whole bunch, right? I mean, first of all, I'd be a pretty poor example of unschooling. Second of all, right? Like, no, you must, right? I don't think he would have retained much. I mean, imagine yourself, like, I mean, when I worked in the corporate world, we used to have to go to these god awful HR sessions and stuff like that. What did you learn? Nothing, because you didn't freaking want to be there, right? Like, you learned absolutely nothing. And so that's that. And then the other thing is too, like, he loves biology. He loves sciences. I have the feeling that might be the area he's heading, which is kind of why he's exploring some of these classes, is he's thinking that that might be his higher education avenue. I don't want to turn him off of biology by making it awful. I'm like, there's a million and one ways to learn biology. Go find the one that works for you, right? I'd rather have you continue to love biology, and we'll tweak. It'll be good.
Yeah, no, totally. And, we're sitting here talking about this and I'm thinking about things. And I guess kind of my last example is more along the lines of Meagan's first example, right? This idea that sometimes, even as a really academic homeschooler, the tweaking isn't so much tweaking as it is making a huge change. And we've talked before about this in earlier episodes. We talked about this idea that so much of homeschooling and successful homeschooling is letting go of expectations, letting go of it has to look like this, or this is what should happen, right? So for us, we started out doing a virtual public school program, right? We had a few hours a day where the kiddo was expected to be online and set math and ELA curriculum that we had to submit weekly. Now, we stuck with it longer than we probably should have, because my kiddo did really enjoy seeing the same kids online day in and day out, right? He likes that. That's his style. That's his personality. He likes people. And they had these in-person field trips on a pretty regular basis that we would join in. And so he would see these same kids every day online. And then, once every other month or something, we'd have an in-person field trip or an art project or hike or something like that with them. And he just really enjoyed that sense of community. So I wanted him to have that. But both the math and the ELA were very below where he was academically. And the school, it was just one of those things, I mean, we all have experienced it in one way or another. The school said that they could do more, that they could, but they couldn't, and so we were ultimately stuck with this curriculum and the classes. And he spent, most of the online class doodling in the edges of the workbook. And then, he'd do all of the math problems in the first couple minutes, and then doodling and not paying any attention and just sitting there and bored, and and like maybe getting up and like, no, you've got to sit back down. This is the virtual online time. They're paying attention to whether or not you're in your seat. It just became a whole thing. I also felt pretty strongly that he should be learning science and history, but in elementary school, early, like first grade kind of elementary school, they were not covering that. So we were at this point where we start supplementing. And I'm supplementing with appropriate math and ELA work. That's where he is skill-wise. And then I find my own geography, science, and history. And we're doing a ton of extra work outside of the few hours a day that he's online, but he's loving all of it, right? He got to help pick out the workbooks, and he's a real little history nerd. I didn't realize that at the time, but we learned right in this through this process. And so, like, he's just really enjoying all of this stuff, but then we're also still required to do this math and ELA that is required, and he couldn't care less about doing. And it's really awful anyway. Like, if anyone wants to hear about terrible curriculums that you don't use, even if you get them for free, like, I see it all the time in my local groups. They're like, we have Envision math workbooks where, we're getting rid of them. You can have them for free. And like, and they should be kindling. Please don't use them. Wonders ELA, all for the, like, run far and fast. Okay. But so what we ended up finding is we're in this place where every time I'm like, all right, you've got to get that ELA worksheet done. You have to finish the workbook. It has to be turned in every week. I have to have it at the school by the end of the day, Friday. Like, I have a half an hour to get to the school. You've got to finish this because I have to turn it in every week. I had to physically take the stuff to the school and turn it in. And I mean, we're just arguing all of the time about it, right? So, like, I'm not going to lie, it's scary to make a big change. Mm-hmm. It's really hard. But every day we were butting heads over completing work with a virtual school program for no good reason, right? He wasn't getting anything out of that work. The only thing he was getting was this group of friends, this sense of community. And really, there were only a couple kids in that class that he did anything with on a one-on-one basis. It took a little bit of extra work on my part as the mom to connect with those moms and make sure that they got to see each other and do things together and actually have real play dates that weren't virtual school. And I'm also not going to lie, it wasn't particularly easy to get my husband on board, but virtual school clearly wasn't working for our family. So I did do the scary thing, right? And I turned in the workbooks and I turned in the textbooks, and the school provided Chromebook. And I went with an option that allowed us to use whatever curriculum and classes we wanted. Now, we're in California, so we ended up going with a homeschool charter program. I know not everyone in all of the states have these kinds of options. For us, we like using the funds to pay for the in-person things he likes to do because, as I said, we were letting go of this consistent friend group thing. And so we have found another way to fulfill that. And it's kind of spendy. So we appreciate the funds that we get in California through that program. But the reality is, when we went that route, we knew that it worked for elementary school. It worked really well for elementary school. We're finding that it doesn't work as well for middle school. And I am 100% positive that it will not work for us for high school. So we've already started a series of discussions about what our next phase of homeschooling is going to look like, right? Sometimes you can make little tweaks here and there. You try this, you try that. Sometimes you're going to make a big change to what you're doing to make it work for your family. And sometimes that's a series of conversations to make sure that everyone is on board, that everyone's expectations are the same. Because if you all have different expectations of what this change is going to be, it's guaranteed to be a bumpier ride than it needs to be, right? So don't be afraid of having a continuous conversation that maybe stretches over a few months. It might even be a year and a half before you get from, okay, we're done here and now we're going to do this. That's okay.
Yeah, so much of what you just said there rang true for me. I mean, it was scary as hell to cut the cord and go to unschooling. And it was a progression over months and months and months and months and months, right? It wasn't like those phases that I talked about at the beginning of the episode. They weren't 2 weeks apiece, right? We sat in each phase for a while and kind of outgrew each phase and then went to the next one. But the thing that I thought about most when you were just sharing that was thinking about your kiddo, and what I know about him now is imagine where he'd been if you hadn't made that scary leap, right? Like, imagine the different path that he would have had and how much he would have missed out on, and his growth trajectory would have been completely different, all of that, right? And I mean, eventually it would have hit a breaking point where you just had no choice. Like, you would have been like, this is intolerable. We can't do this anymore, and you probably just did it earlier than that, which is why it was harder to make that decision, right? Sometimes you reach such a point of discomfort that it's easier to make the switch. But yeah, it reminded me like when I pulled my kids from school, originally I was only going to pull my oldest kid from school out of distinct need. And I thought, well, I'll give myself a year and I'll see what's going on with homeschool. And then maybe I'll pull the other two. And I ended up pulling all of them. I was really torn about it. My daughter really enjoyed school. She's a bit of a busybody. She really likes coming home and telling me who got put on yellow in school that day. And, it was a lot about who got in trouble. There was always some of that in there. My kids went to a Jewish preschool, and somebody came with a ham sandwich to school one day, ham and cheese sandwich, which is against like 27 different rules. And she was like, and Miss Jody had to call his mom. It was big news in her world that day. So she just liked like the environment of school, the busyness of it, and the people factor. And she liked being involved in all the conversations and all that kind of stuff. And I felt like, am I taking that away from her? Is it unfair? She seems to like the environment and all that kind of stuff. But there were some definite downs for her as well in school. But still, it was enough that it wasn't as clear as it was for my oldest, And that was, a decade ago. And I look at this kid now and what she's doing and what she's accomplished and where she is. And I'm like, she would never be where she is if I had like not in a million years would she be where she is right now if I had left her in school. So yeah, but it's scary. I mean, you're like, is my kid going to end up laying on a sofa in a therapist's office talking about this decision that I'm making right now? And they might, but
yeah,
you do the best you can.
They're still going to be at the therapist office for something. So at least we did the best we thought we could.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. So when in doubt, tweak. It's okay. And come chat with us. Come to one of our Q&As. Come join our Facebook group. We do one-on-one coaching. We've both done the scary things over and over and over again. We've done the scary things. So if you need help and you need a little bit of courage, come. We are more than happy to help kind of talk through those things through your particular situation. So come. We're here to help. But yes, yeah, absolutely. Amanda, do you have a mantra for us for the end of our episode?
I do. We're going to wrap up with this mantra. Admitting something isn't working isn't failure. It shows strength and maturity.
Absolutely. Right.
I think we forget that so often in all areas of life, not just homeschooling, but especially with homeschooling as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
So tweak. And if you need a buddy's hand to hold while you tweak, come, we'll be your buddy. We're good at it. All right, friends. Well, that wraps us up for today. We hope that this episode was helpful and that you enjoyed it. And in the meantime, until we see you on Thursday for book club, happy homeschooling.
Yeah. Have a great one.